that Grenfell Tower fire, because of course almost 2 months on there are many people, dozens of them, who still haven't been formally identified and confirmed as having lost their lives. So people there praying and hoping praying for their souls and for those who are missing, presumed dead. And it comes today as a letter was written to the inquiry and its chair and panel by a number of organisations, including the Association of Muslim Lawyers, the Society of Black Lawyers and of Asian Lawyers as well, calling for more representation on that panel in order to ensure that the inquiry reflects the people that lived in Grenfell Tower and live in the local area. Now, I'm joined by Yvette Williams. She's one of the coordinators for Justice for Grenfell. Yvette, thank you for joining us this evening. So, there are many people calling for more representation from black and ethnic minorities, for example. What's your position on that?
My take on it is that the chair of the panel doesn't have a lived experience of what life is for us in areas such as North Kensington, and it would be to his advantage to have community representation on there to advise him and give him some kind of, you know, further information and true experience about how he should enter into the inquiry. The inquiry is about people. It isn't just about that building, and he has to show that he has some understanding of that, and he can only get that from independent advice. So yeah, the Justice for Grenfell campaign has actually called for that as well, and we think that that will build trust and confidence in what the inquiry is doing.
Another issue addressed in that letter is the terms of reference, and there are many who say that, well, Sir Martin Morbick himself said initially that they may be very narrow, they may not please everybody. I mean, what would you like to see in terms of reference?
Well, we've made a call that the remit has to be wider. We have asked in phase one, we can understand that, you know, it's important that the actual fire, the building, is taken into consideration, but I think failing that after phase two, it needs to be wider and it needs to be people focused. We've also asked to make sure that the people's voices are heard at the centre of the inquiry, in particular the survivors and the bereaved families. So we've asked for, you know, all of the documentation to come out in community languages so that nobody's excluded, and for survivors and bereaved families to also be able to question the key witnesses themselves, even if they choose to do that through their legal representation.
There are reports that that inquiry could be delayed due to, of course, the pursuance of criminal charges. I mean, those criminal charges may not see any convictions on a personal level for any of the executives anyway. So, I mean, is there any point?
I think there has to be a point, and I think that the public inquiry and the inquest need to hear what the people are saying. People are not going to be satisfied. People lost their homes and possessions. Moreover, people lost their lives. And you know, people see that is part of what a justice package and outcome looks like, okay? We want, you know, private, personal prosecutions that happen. We need the inquiry to build trust and confidence so that we're clear in that process that they are listening to those key people. And we also need it to kind of make recommendations so that something like this doesn't happen anywhere again. So I think, you know, they need to be clear about what the people are requesting. They need to be listening to them. They need to be heard. And if they start messing about along the way, I wouldn't like to think what the fallout for that would be.
Yvette, thank you very much for joining us this evening on RT. Thank you very much. So still much to be done by that inquiry in order to win the trust of people from the local community and, of course, campaigners who still feel like the establishment is trying to perhaps downplay what has happened, and to make sure that, and they want to make sure that people are truly held to account for that fire, which was nearly 2 months ago now.
Well, for more, I'm now joined in the studio by Grenfell campaigner, Professor Chris Imafidon. Chris, briefly define what is meant by terms of reference.
It's really setting the boundaries for questions that must be asked by the inquiry in order to know whether or not the real objectives of government is accomplished. Because if you set it too narrow, then it will just say, what caused the fire? And they say, oh, it's a fridge that caused the fire. And that's the end of question. But you have to broaden it not just to the primary cause of the fire, but to the secondary and the underlining. If we don't do that, then we'll have this case all over again.
You have submitted a suggestion. What was your idea? One of, 300 submissions for these terms of reference?
Yeah, I wrote 10 questions, and then the second one had 2 sub-questions. The inquiry must be absolutely clear that they have the resources and they have the power to be able to summon anybody that they think may have secondary information about what happened on the 14th of June. Because it's the longest day in my life. I saw it, I witnessed it. I saw the commotion between what the police were telling the locals that wanted to go in and help in the rescue operation and what the fire service was telling the individuals in the flat what to do. They told them, sit in, we're coming for you. And the locals were asked to stay out, they're coming for you. And that was so tragic. That communication gap is unbelievable.
So many questions to be asked. The question is, there's a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of scepticism and indeed suspicion over this inquiry, and indeed Sir Martin Moore-Bick has been accused of being out of touch. Well, he's actually extended the deadline twice over these submissions. He's also made a point of consulting with survivors. So what more can this man do?
Listen, because the fundamental discord between the residents and the local authority was that there was institutionalized silence, indifference and insensitivity. If they had listened to the locals, they would have had at least sprinklers. If they had listened to the locals, they would have a second fire exit. So there are so many things that if you're living in a house, at least they should give you some respect to say, at least you know where the house leaks. You shouldn't just say, no, we have the experts. Like the TMOs always said, if you call the TMO and you're a local resident, the so-called tenant management organization did not manage the tenant, did not manage the activities. They were so detached from the tenants. And now Sir Martin Moore-Bick's background suggests a man that is detached from the working class. And that's where that confidence comes into a real head.
What about a criminal investigation that has been suggested? It sounds as if that would possibly give more of the answers to the questions you're raising now than an actual inquiry. What do you make of this idea of pursuing corporate manslaughter charges?
The manslaughter charges has to be because there were institutions that were managing the resources, or what they call the housing units now on behalf of the council. So they have to be asked questions.
But residents would perhaps be very encouraged by the idea of a criminal investigation, but actually what residents want are individuals to be brought to account, and that criminal investigation over corporate manslaughter wouldn't necessarily do that, would it?
Yeah, it would dilute it, but it would still shame the individual officers, because we're calling for all the emails exchanges, all the correspondence that took place between the tenants that were ignored, the TMO and the local authority. That will expose it.
The public inquiry and the criminal investigation should happen. Some are saying the criminal investigation could actually slow down the public inquiry, and maybe it should, because that should come first. Or would you rather just have the public inquiry? What's the answer?
The public inquiry should go ahead because it embraces all aspects of what happened. Now, the prosecution is looking at who did what. But the inquiry is looking at the whole...
So both can happen?
Yeah, both can happen. It's happened with the Hillsborough disaster. It's happened with this. There are precedents to public inquiry as well as specific criminal prosecutions. I don't see why there should be any fears over the two of them overlapping or conflicting, because one is specific about what happened global. The other one is looking at who did what that went wrong on the 14th of June and why it mustn't happen again.
Professor Chris Imafidon, thank you very much indeed for joining us here in the studio.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It's